Alrighty, what is going on, everyone? This is Kyle from Dissecting The Artwork, and I'm here with Andrew Schwab of Project 86. How are you today,
Thanks
mate?
for having me, Kyle.
Yeah, no worries. How's your Christmas?
The Christmas was good. It's very much in the rear view now.
Yeah.
Now we're sort of trying to regroup into the new year in every way.
Yeah, 2019 should be a good one. Do you have much planned for 2019? Either, new music projects or you've got the podcast, so do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, first and foremost, the thing that has been occupying my time the most is Pioneer's podcast, Finding Your Creative Voice. And that's available wherever podcasts are listened to. I also have a Patreon page set up that I'm luring in subscribers for gradually. So that's been great. It's been really cool. The inspiration or the motivation, I guess, to start the podcast has been very much alive in me for a few years now, but I never pulled the trigger on it because I was always busy doing other things, and it just seemed like the appropriate time right now to pull the trigger on it. I was really dedicated before I started it to at least attempt to make it something unique. Not like every other of the million podcasts that are out there. There's so many of them.
Yeah, there really is.
I've made the joke that I'm late to the party and I'm only here because I felt left out.
What was sort of like the motivation that made you sort of take the final step in starting the actual thing?
There was a moment in time where I was mentally Rolodexing all of these memories and all of these stories that I have that are a part of this long journey in doing creative work, doing music, and some of the other things that I've been able to do along the way, graphic design and writing books and calligraphy. I've always been a creative.
Yeah.
My entire adult life, and I've always been able to somehow figure out a way to make a living doing these things. Barely, but I've been able to do it. But I have all these stories. And so I had this moment in time where I said, I'm going to take all these stories to my grave with me unless I find some way to make them known to the world. And so that was the first point. But I definitely didn't want to do a podcast in a format or in a way that was hopefully similar to everyone else out there, especially in the same realm as me. Frontman for a band, frontman for a rock band. It's so common now that the guy in the band has a podcast and talks to other guys in bands and talks about band stuff or relives the glory days. And so the thought process was for me, how can I take my stories or story and unite them with other people's stories to hopefully serve a greater purpose in people's lives, to help people. One thing, and then the question came to me, or the thought popped to my head is, well, what is a universal concept that we can tie in the stories of different types of creatives into? And one thing that I thought about was everyone is trying to make their voices heard in culture. Because whether you have a YouTube channel or social media or you're an artist in some form or a communicator or a brand manager, everybody in culture, it seems today, is trying to innovate, trying to find a hole in the market, trying to be their own boss, trying to be an entrepreneur, trying to be a spokesman for something.
Yeah, that is a massive thing about this generation. Everyone is trying to do their own thing and sort of be heard rather than be sort of in a company. Everyone's trying to sort of be their own iconic person. So that's sort of a big thing about this generation.
Yeah, and a lot of that is a fruit of the technology that's available to us. And so I know that there's a chord there. And I know that you could say whatever you want about my music or my story in particular, whatever you believe about that, or even if you've never heard of me. But I know one thing is that I have had some sort of success or voice inside of my endeavors that people listen to.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
there's something to do that, and there's a built-in teaching tool there.
Yeah.
What can I say about my experiences, my failures especially, that will help other people learn to use their voices more effectively? And what can guests that I bring on, not just musical guests, but guests from across the entertainment and creative or even entrepreneurial, communicative landscape, under this umbrella of teaching people to find their own voices in culture. And that's the vision for the podcast. And I'm checking the box of the Project 86 fans, telling a ton of stories, relating it back to the work and the process of the work. Hey, this is how I learned to write lyrics. This is how I learned to write songs. This is how I learned how to perform. This is how I learned to do a band. This is how I learned to write books. This is how I learned to become a graphic designer. This is how I learned to do calligraphy. This is how I learned to do all these different things with the platform that's been afforded to me. And hopefully something in here is going to give you something beyond the entertainment value of the podcast and give you a takeaway. And then there's all these other people I can bring on that I have relationships with, or maybe use the platform of the podcast itself to bring on who have unique cultural voices that can share their story. How did you do what you do? Why did you start doing what you do? And there's a ton of teaching in that as well. And so hopefully all of that combined with the community that we have on Patreon now, which is really a team of co-creators that I've employed. You know, people are subscribing to the podcast, but I interact with them on a daily basis. You see that. You're a part of that.
Definitely.
How can we work together as a team to do something under the umbrella of this concept? To share your stories, my story, the guest stories with the world, and help one another in the process.
It's the podcast, like, you know, the result of it is really good. It's really it's very inspirational, and it's also really good to see an insight as to, you know, the behind the scenes of music making, even if you're not a Project 86 fan, which I am, but like, you know, that you could see the, you know, just how someone does their certain type of creating, like, you know, how you write lyrics, what you do when you get into a block, when you know, trying to make music or trying to make just about any form of art. It's sort of like, it's really good to see, you know, just sort of a different perspective on the whole thing of just art creation as a whole. So it's, you know, even if you're not a Project 86 fan, it's really good to just get another view of this whole thing. So, you know, it's, I'm absolutely loving what you're doing. And like you said with Patreon, it's a very it's a group effort rather than one person, you know, one person just saying, I'm going to do it my way, and not sort of acknowledge the fans. You are on Patreon just about every day, asking for support, asking for advice. You're doing Instagram live videos, you know, you're asking the fans and the listeners what they want to hear. So I absolutely love how you're handling it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, Kyle. And you're such a big supporter. You're an executive producer of the podcast, so you have a special role in this thing, obviously. Beyond the financial end of it, I think, you know, I'm leaning on you guys, you know, to help make me better at what I'm doing here with this thing. And this translates directly into the music that I make as well, because it's reigniting a sense of motivation and inspiration inside of me as well. Reliving stories, reliving lyrics that I've written, reliving these relationships. Another thing that's been really inspiring and hopefully makes this whole thing unique is I call everyone personally that subscribes to the podcast. And this is the first time we've had a chance to speak.
It's
the conversations that I've been able to have with people who've been longtime supporters of the band and of me personally are supremely motivational, because I'm seeing tangibly, wow, the things that I've made have impacted your life. And people are telling me that, and I'm like, wow, you know, I need to keep pushing myself to go further with everything that I'm doing. It's really cool.
Is it very different seeing, you know, I assume it would be, but just seeing, like, rather than seeing comments of, you know, I love your stuff, rather than actually talking to them, like, how different is it to see, you know, a bunch of YouTube comments in contrast to a phone conversation or a video call? How different is that?
It takes it to a more relationship-based level. I think anytime you follow an artist or a band, there's a distance there between that artist and the listener or the fan or whatever word you want to use. And that distance has a sort of dehumanizing effect, especially on the artist, where you don't necessarily perceive them as a human being. You perceive them as a caricature of a human being. Some of that is intentional. Yeah. Because music and art is meant to take you somewhere, and the artist that creates that can enhance that in any way they choose by either enhancing their own persona in the context of the music and the visual art, or the way they approach stage performance. These are all things that we're trying to discuss and look at on the podcast as well. But I think when you connect with someone personally, you become a human being. Yeah. And that person becomes a human being as well. It works both ways, because the people who buy your music or who buy a t-shirt or whose names pop up on social media, they're just a name as well. Yeah. And it's so easy to I use the word dehumanizing, right? Yeah. And so when you're just a name as an artist, or an image of something, or a caricature of a human being in connection to an art form, when you don't like a song, or you don't like an album, or you disagree with something they say, it's easy to troll them, or just treat them like they're no one that's human. Yeah, it's easy to hide behind the wall. I love destroying that. Yeah. Through these types of conversations, because now, oh, wait a second, now we're actually human beings who have a relationship of some sorts. Yeah. And hopefully through that process, there is a greater appreciation for the artistic, creative work, right? And that's another thing I'm trying to illuminate, is this is everything that goes into these lyrics. This is everything that goes into writing these songs or making an album or in a performance. All of the thought, all of the intention, all of the conversations that take place without the public seeing it. Here's a glimpse into the creative process in a way that maybe you've never seen before. And again, extending that to my guests, not just people in bands, although I have had all musical guests. Bruce fits the podcast the podcast is very new. Yeah. So we've had on Maddie from Memphis Mayfire, Bruce Fitzhugh from Living Sacrifice, Corey from Norma Jean, Toby from Emery and Bad Christian, Ryan Clark from Demon Hunter, Matt from August Burns Red. So a lot of heavy music fans will be delighted by these episodes. But as we expand, I want to bring on music producers, film and TV actors, different types of content creators and entrepreneurs, guys who started successful clothing lines, stand-up comedians, that'd be good. People who represent the culture at large, not just necessarily my own worldview or belief system. Yeah. And so hopefully this thing will continue to gain steam, gain listenership, and as we do, that will afford us the opportunity, I say us because it really is a team effort, to have on some bigger name guests who have some great things to offer from a teaching standpoint, from a story standpoint, and from this idea of valuing creative work and creative process. Yeah, well, you've only sort of just started the podcast, and already you've got, you listed about 6 musicians. The podcast is only 11 episodes in, and you've already got such an impressive catalog. So it's only going to grow from here. Oh, that's the hope, man. That is the hope, is the combination of great content. Hopefully it's great. I'm trying to make it great. Thanks, man. Combination of great content that's both entertaining and has some takeaway, and a great guest list, a unique sort of umbrella or vision to the endeavor, and listenership. That's a big thing. Yeah. People listening, charting on Apple, charting on other podcast networks, subscribers on Patreon. All this goes into when I go to Dave Chappelle and I say, do you want to come on the podcast? The first thing that his media representative would say to me is, well, what kind of listenership do you have? What kind of reach do you have? What makes this worthy of Dave Chappelle's time? I'm using that as a random example. I'm not necessarily going after Dave Chappelle at this moment in time, but a bigger guest that doesn't know me from my band,
Yeah.
is going to look at the stats and the numbers, and hopefully I've done my due diligence to build a groundswell. We've done our due diligence to build a groundswell to make it viable for these guests to have voices in culture, to tell us why they did what they did, how they do what they do. That's really fun to hear about. Really cool.
Absolutely.
For me personally.
Yeah, it's really good. You know, you did the like the bonus pack or like the subscriber pack where you gave like behind the scenes, or you will give behind the scenes interviews, rare photos, and also song demos, which, you know, as sort of a creator, that would be really inspiring to see, because as a fan, you just see sort of like the end result. Whereas with the beta sessions and the demos, you actually see how it was before. So as much as you can just see the final thing and go, oh yeah, that's good, it's really good to see sort of, and with the podcast as well, it's really good to see sort of an insight onto what the journey was and what sort of like the starting, you know, what the start of it actually sounded like.
Well, we've released a few demos, or I've released a few demos as a part of the upgrade package.
Okay.
So I've been offering this to people who have already subscribed or who are interested in upgrading their subscription. Project 86 demos, rare pics and videos, some bonus content interviews with author Anne Rice, Dustin Kensrue from Thrice. I even did one with Scott Stapp a while ago from Creed, which is really interesting. And I'm releasing that to you guys over the months, right? So in chunks, basically. But yeah, my intention with the demos specifically was to show you, in conjunction with, I believe it's episode 6, where I talk about lyric writing process, how to write lyrics, how I write lyrics, and all that goes into it. There's, I think, an hour and a half of content on that episode. And have you listen to that episode and then hear a demo from the band that ended up becoming a recognized song in the catalog, but maybe in the demo phase, it was like just skeletal and just a beginning point. And hopefully you can see the growth that happens from that point in time when you collect the instruments together into this idea and what it can become. It's pretty fun to look at, I think. Yeah,
in relation to music production, the demos that you released and the final song, they don't sound similar at all. Like, obviously you can tell what song it is, but in terms of mastering and sound quality, it doesn't sound similar at all. So it's really good to see sort of how, you know, the 3 songs in the demos or in the upgrade pack, it's really good to see sort of how they went from this, as you said, skeletal, you know, beta or demo to this insane song with amazing guitar riffs, you know, hard-hitting drums. Like, it's really good to see the transition between, or the comparison between both songs. So yeah, it's really, you know, do you have many upgrade packs or sort of these kind of packs set for the future?
Yeah, over the next several months, I'm going to send these out in waves. So more demos, more stuff, cool stuff. So for people that upgrade, it just, again, this is just lending to the idea that I'm trying to make this as cool of an experience for people to be a part of as possible if you're subscribers. And of course, there's a free version of the podcast, and you can listen to that, like I said, wherever podcasts are listened to. And I try not to skimp on the free content. You know, I don't just reward subscribers. The subscription is key for content creators like myself who exist based upon selling our work. You know, and in the context of doing the podcast, you know, selling that subscription, that's what pays the bills for people like me who are not in any way, shape, or form getting rich doing these types of things. And so, you know, it's cool. You mentioned demos to take this in a little bit different direction. You know, over the years, as a songwriter and as an artist and a musician, there's been various approaches to demo writing. How we approach the initial document of the songs is to best serve the bigger picture of the album we're creating and the final version of that song. I've learned over the years that crappy demos are way better than good demos.
There's more to grow from.
And there's this thing called demo-itis that we experienced on a few albums over the years, where we made this really killer demo that had really killer vocals, and then when we went to record it for the album, we re-record everything, right? and then you just don't have the same magic that you had on the demo, and then it's just there's something lost in translation there. So I wanted to never have that happen again. So I always try to push for a really crappy demo, so there's only room to grow from it.
Make them as bad as possible to begin with.
Yeah, make them as bad as possible to begin